Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's begin this conversation, the program this morning, with this first conversation, and it's about helping how we can even get our states to be more viable. Two gentlemen we're going to start with this morning. Mr. Segun Shokputon joins us here. He is chairman of ACT, civil society organization. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And we also have with us Chuka Nnabuife, who is a former managing director and editor-in-chief, Anambra Newspaper and Printing Corporation. He joins us virtually from Awka. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning, Mr. Nnabuife.
Good morning.
Okay. Let me begin with you, Mr. Shokputon. There have been conversations about another state coming up. In fact, I think there was a bill sent to the House of Representatives for 3 states, I think, in southwest Nigeria, and I think 1 or 2 in the southeast as well. So, from your own estimation, and there are those who are also saying, look, even if we're going to talk about the viability of the states, creating more states, what are the indices that we should be using? Political consideration, economic considerations, and all of that. And there are those who are even asking, the states that we have now, are they even accountable to the people? Where should this conversation itself be starting from?
Okay, thanks for having me again. I think that, for me, you have to look at the National Assembly and people who are the representatives of Nigerians at large, and ask questions as to whether they understand the mandates that they are executing on behalf of the people. If you look at the current realities in the country today, you can't but wonder where this is coming from, and how anybody, would have the mind to suggest addition of new states, given the realities, given what we know about Nigeria today. You were speaking about the minimum wage question earlier. As we speak, till now, there are states that have not implemented the 30,000 minimum wage, as we speak. We're having a conversation about increasing that minimum wage to 60,000, and majority of the states have already come out to say they will not be able to abide by whatever is agreed, on the basis of incapacitation from a financial point of view, and yet our National Assembly is allowing bills to come up asking for creation of more states. I think before we get to the point of conversing or having conversations around creating more states, we have to ask ourselves questions about how well, it's going for the current states, for the states that we do have now. How well are they delivering on their mandate? What is the purpose of state creation? What exactly is the objective of having the subnational government and the second tier of government, if you like? Isn't it supposed to be to take development and access to the governance process closer to the people? The assumption being that, Nigeria is a large entity, 928,000 square kilometers or something like that. It's a huge, landmass, and it will be very difficult for one single government at the center to reach out to every single nook and cranny across this wide expanse of geographical space effectively. Therefore, you want to break it up and bring the process closer to the people. And yet, you've done that. Military governments over the years have given us more states, from the regional states to 12 to 21 and now to the 36 that we have. And in that period, the honest truth is that we really haven't seen that key objective being achieved, of bringing the governance process closer to the people in a manner that can touch them. So if you take the conversation down to the local government level as well, you still find that it's pretty much the same thing. The states have captured the local governments, and they can't really achieve that objective of bringing governance to the people.
Well, we'll come back. We'll come back. My apologies. We'll come back to the part of the local government, even the responsibility of the states themselves right now. But when we look at all of these issues, that are being raised, I'll come to Mr. Nnabuife in a moment. When we look at all these issues that are being raised, claims that Okay. So there was this comment that credited to Samson Itodo, who is the executive director of Yaga Africa. And he said, look, on the one hand, he speaks the way you spoke, that what's the viability of the states? Are they viable? The ones that we have, are they viable? But then he also looks at the other divide, which is the political consideration. And his opinion is that, look, on the one hand, it is good for us to consider the political permutations. On the other hand, on the economic permutation. On the other hand, is the political. That, for instance, in the House of Representatives, certain roles are given or certain votes go in a particular direction based on the population of the voting blocks. He says, for instance, that there is justification in his own mind for a state in the Southeast because of the political permutations. The Southeast in its entirety, the entire region has only 5 states. Meanwhile, there are other states, other regions that have 7, some have 6, and some have 5, and the rest of them. So on that basis, he looks at that. But what's your take on that one?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't run away from that as a key issue that needs to be addressed, in my opinion. I think that the questions around the distribution of the states across the regions have to be addressed. So the Southeast, in my view, and I think this is a generally shared view amongst fair-minded people, the Southeast is shortchanged, because when it comes to resource allocation, these things actually count. You count the number of states. Don't forget, within the number of states, you have number of federal constituencies, number of senatorial districts, you have number of local governments, and all of these variables come into play when you even talk about revenue allocation, So clearly, something needs to be done about the state distribution of states. Why does the Northwest have 7 and the Southeast have 5? Why? Yes, we understand that there is a large landmass that maybe you might claim that 6 states or 5 states may not be adequate to cover in the Northwest. But you are shortchanging another region as a result of that. So I think there is clearly an argument for balancing up of these things. But my view is before you can debate that argument and propose solutions to it, you must address the viability question. And we have to face it squarely and be honest with ourselves. Because as it is now, the states are not delivering on their mandates. They are not fulfilling the objective of bringing governance to the people. In fact, the reality is that the states currently are vehicles for political patronage, dispensation of patronage, and they're like empires that are under the control of the emperor governors.
There are those who would
also has to be dealt with.
Yeah, there are those who would also ask you whether or not even those the states themselves are aware of what their responsibilities are. Let me ask Sana Bwife this next one. So it's first of all the viability question, and then the arguments that have been put forward as to whether or not we should have more states. Our focus is on the viability question, how to make the states that we have, all 36 of them, more viable. But let's begin with that conversation about creation of new states. The Southwest is asking for 3 more. The Southeast, I think, is asking for 2 more. And from as far back as sometime in the 70s, the Gowan government increased in the number of states from 4 regions to 12. And then successive governments raised it to 19, to 21, to 30, to 36 that we have right now. So the question of the need for more states. One of the comments that was put forward by someone asked the question, look, on the one hand, you guys are saying, okay, we need more states, we need to create more states. But then there's also the question of whether or not we're even aware of what the responsibilities of the states are. I'm quoting, let me quickly quote the chairman, Independent Media and Policy Initiative, Nia Keshiju, who said, historically, the basis of state creation in Nigeria is not on the capacity of self-sustenance, consideration for state, or rather advocacy for state creation has not been on economic capacity. What's your take on that?
Let me start from the last point you made, from the last sentence. Considerations for the creation of state in Nigeria had not really all been on the economic capacity, although economy counts seriously. It has never been, it has been on political convenience and social convenience. These are the grounds for creating a state. But first, let me note, no matter what ground that is being considered, it is only rational, it is only politically expedient. Remember, I told you that it's political expedience that has been the main guiding point for Nigeria's creation of state. If, no matter the consideration, given the way Nigeria's resources are distributed, given the way opportunities rise and fall in Nigeria, and given the way Nigeria is, there is a need for at least one or two states in Southeast that every person who wants to be fair for justice and equity. But these are the conditions, prime conditions for the creation of states. One is geographical convenience. That is either natural boundaries or or individual man-made boundaries bring some people together that it's better to administer them in that cluster. Two is cultural affinity. There are some people who are living with cultures that are not conducive for them, and it is affecting their well-being. Three is economic consideration. Can that state, or can the people being created, can they stay on their own? The fourth is for peace and safety of either the people living within that enclave or the people, their neighbors. When they bring these people together within a state and administer them, will there be relative peace or better peace for their neighbors and for them? And the state in the Southeast, for example, the so far advanced one, the Olu state that is has gone through the first reading in the National Assembly. Good tidings for me, because that state is actually, half of that state is oil-bearing local councils, oil-bearing communities. Half of the proposed new state, from Ihiala to Oguta to Njaba, are oil and gas-bearing communities. So survival is not, and that is actually where you have a cluster of human resource, billionaires, by every word that you have. Also, there is also the cultural homogeneity of those people, the people that are within that enclave, within the newly state. But that is not just the argument. The argument is that states it is based on states that you share opportunities, call it through the Commission for National Affirmation, which we do call several names, or be it in appointments, be it in federal sharing formula for local governments and for states. So the derivative for the Southeast is actually shortchanged by having 5 states when Northwest has 7. When actually North Central has 6 plus Abuja, which makes it de facto 7. When you have other regions from South to Southwest to all the other zones having 6 states. So there is no rationale for saying that Southeast should not have another state. And when you begin to to advance arguments of economic sustainability, yes, there are many states that are not economically sustainable. Say that of I don't think you can really say that of Anambra State. You understand? These states, by every assessment, are economically solvent and they can sustain themselves. This is also another state coming from that same belt that is, if you argue from that economic ground, you can hazard a guess and say that this will succeed.
Okay, just 1 second if you can hear me. 2023 report was released late last year. It's a report by Economic Confidential, a subsidiary of PR Nigeria, declared 7 states as the most viable. It just so happens that, from what I can see here, Lagos, Ogun, Rivers, Kaduna, Kwara, Oyo, and Edo are said to be the most viable states. It so happens on this list, and I'll be fair, that no Southeast state is listed as most viable. That's not to say they are not viable. Says no Southeast state is listed in this report as most viable. Is that a concern for you?
Yeah. It is. It is a concern, but that is not that is not a verdict.
But it's not to say, just a second, it's not to say that the states cannot be viable. Where I'm going with that is to ask the question of viability. Is it in the management of the resources, or in the permutations, or in the recruitment process for the leaders? Because there is no state, to the best of my knowledge, there is no state in this country that doesn't have its own some resources or the other. Lagos would have been considered the least viable, but for some reason, it's able to create some kind of economic sustainability for itself. Dubai, all it had was the desert, and now look at what we're talking about concerning Dubai. So I believe that the same thing applies in the Southeast. So what do you think the challenge to be?
Actually, Ayo, you are somebody who I believe knows my public opinion on certain issues like this. At least within the last, I am not new to your programs. At least within the last 10 years plus, you know my grounds on several occasions, and I have always advocated solvency of states. But actually, as somebody who happens to be let me say, a fellow of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, a senior journalist for that matter, I have been part of some polls, and I know how we organize polls. It's always good for when you present polls, you tell the public your benchmark for assessment. Because if I'm doing assessment based on good governance, I may not mention those states. If I'm doing my assessment that includes electoral fairness, I may not have all these states. If I'm talking about indebtedness, I may not include those states. There are several benchmarks, and there are several polls that give their verdict. But by the way, if it is economic solvency, I am saying that the new states, at least, particularly the one, the proposed Olu state, will and will surely be. And I am also telling you that Anambra has not gone within the states that is under by any gauge, by any assessment. And then it is also from that same block that these ones are coming. There are things that make things happen. If you hobble people together where they are uncomfortable, they may actually act as spoilers to the system, or if they are where they are happy, they may be enablers to the system. If you have people working in an environment that is marked by hostility or insecurity, there may be some drawbacks to the system that will affect the economy, or some developments in the system that you never planned for. What we are talking about here is, first, let there be that equity, which everybody that is fair will understand that the Southeast needs that at least one state. Initially, the Southeast currently is stabling and advancing 4 states, from Anioma state to other state to Equity state to this Olu state. And there are even some states that have other parts in it. Just like Southwest is advancing 3 states, proposing 3 states. But for now, let this one be to balance the equation because of our economic paradigms, the way we share, for equitable sharing and understanding.
Okay.
And if you feel that the country is going a little bit, let me use the word loosely, noisy, you try as much as possible to quell the noise from angles, social and political, that you can do it. Then all the economic thing shall come. Kwame Nkrumah said, seek ye first the political kingdom, and everything shall be added unto it.
well, Mr. Shukpito, I'm sure you have your opinions to what he said, but begin from here. We got a message from Festus Akimboyewa in the UK, who says, it's via Twitter, he says, we don't need more states in Nigeria. We only need local governments to function. In fact, we are really serious. In fact, if we are really serious, we should get rid of the states and their lame duck houses of assemblies. Nigerians need local governments more than the states. Do you agree with him?
Well, it's an opinion, and all shades of opinion are always welcome. It's a part of the debate, but I think it's a bit extreme to suggest that you eliminate the second tier of government and focus on only the federal and then the local government.
Perhaps because we are practicing the federal system?
It's a federal system, you know, and we must understand that the states are actually the federating units. In fact, the Constitution, it's part of the problem. So the part of what it says that I agree with is that we do need to get the local governments to function better. And one of the problems we have is that the Constitution does not make enough provisions for that. There's too much latitude given to the states in terms of how resources are allocated and in terms of the functionalities of those arms of government or tiers of government, such that the states tend to usurp the roles of the local government. So yes, I do agree with that, but to say that we don't need the state, I think it's a stretch. What we do need is to find an accountability framework that will work for this country, because I think that's the problem. If you look at all of the different laws, policies, and regulations that we have in this country with regards to accountability, responsibility, and all of that, there's so many of them, and when you just read on the surface of it, they're fantastic. And you ask yourself why we have this situation we do have if these types of provisions exist. And the answer to that for me is that Nigerian citizens simply are not engaged enough. We're not engaged in the governance process. We complain a lot. Now, thanks to social media, people have an avenue to vent that didn't exist before. So what a lot of people have become are keyboard warriors that say a lot of things on social media, in the different WhatsApp groups, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all of that. But when it comes to getting up from your room, from your office, or from your chair, and walking onto the streets and talking to a government agency or institution somewhere, too many people are simply not involved enough in this type of activity. And I think that's where the problem is.
Okay.
We need to demand accountability of the state government in particular. A lot of attention and focus is on the federal government. For obvious reasons. They are the allocators of the resources. The Constitution gives them very strong powers and constrains a lot of things at the center. So yes, attention will go there, but we are not giving enough attention to the blue murder, pardon my language, that happens at the state level.
Okay. Now, let's coast home with some solutions now, gentlemen. I was actually hoping that we would have one other person with us who promised he was going to be here, but for some reason he's unable to. Now, the issue of viability. Okay, maybe I should ask you first.
Yes.
Viability, accountability. Which one should we give more attention right this moment?
Accountability will inevitably result in viability. So I think we need to focus our attention on accountability. With the little you have, to whom little is given, you know, more will be given if you are accountable for that little, right? So if we focus our energies and our efforts as a country and as a people, in fact, as a people, more than as a country, if we focus our attentions and energies on the accountability side of the equation, viability will be one of the inevitable side products.
Okay. Sana Buife, do you agree with him? Which one should we be giving more attention now? Viability of states or accountability of the state governments?
I share his view that accountability should be more important than viability. But on the level of importance, I am not even, viability may come actually if you explore and exploit the viability when you have good governance. Good governance will actually get the viability to actually be more helpful to the people. But accountability, even if you are not viable, the little you get, because look at how our states are arranged, are structured, and how our system works. Our system works in a manner that presents money to states monthly. So some states actually go literally fold their hands and wait for that the token or the bonanza, depending on what they call it, what they see it as, that comes. So if you are accountable, you can actually manage the little you have, even if from that monthly derivative.
Okay, so beginning with you now, Sana Buife, how do we make the states more viable? The reason for the question is because, you know, you and I know that the trust between the people and the government is greatly depleted. That account is greatly depleted. We are probably now in minus 100 million in terms of the trust between the people and the government, or, you know, but we have to have a government. There is no way we can do anything without having a government. So how do we make the states, just one second. How do we make the states viable enough for the people to trust that these guys are really serving us, serving our interests, and helping us to go towards the promised prosperity?
I think you have answered yourself, Ayo. But let me actually embellish your information. It is a trust deficiency. And it is because of that trust deficiency that we are not having the kind of governance that people hobble to, people cavort to, people identify with. I hope you are getting. What we need is accountability, yes, which will bring trust, management of the social factors of dissent, of distraction, in a way that will bring contentment and bring people together.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to...
a kind of God hope. Yeah?
No, go ahead. We lost you for a bit. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, hope. If they give people hope, when people have hope, hope will make them cavort towards government. And then those are all viability. Do you know that there are states that don't have, there are countries and states that don't have even mineral resources as we do have. They don't have the money that they take monthly that as we do, but they have human resource. Human resource can actually be part of the things that make a state viable. Because I know some places where you go and you have some of the best services, be it in the cuisine, or be it in the creative industries, be it in technocracy, or be it like in shipping. If you go to Singapore, for example, what else do they do? Is it not the same water that passes through its neighbors? But the way they have managed to bring people together and managed to get them, get their people to buy into the dream of the state becomes so solvent and becomes so economically viable that you begin to think that they have a better catch of wealth than others. No. It is
there is also the argument, Sana Buife, my apologies for butting in. There is also the, let me bring that out to you, Mr. Shukwito. There is also the argument that, look, maybe the states are not thinking creatively enough. The state government successively, maybe they are not thinking creatively enough. There are those who would point to, for instance, in Oyo State, there are those who would point to the Fashola farms of many years ago and say, guys, we had this. Look at the old Naira notes that we had. There was the groundnut pyramid. It was like the symbol of where Nigeria was and the potential that Nigeria always had. We don't have those groundnut pyramids anymore. So there would be that argument. I mean, the Southeast, for instance, was known for its coal. So we don't seem to have those ones anymore, only perhaps because we are, as San Abuife has pointed out, we wait for the monthly handout. So if we are going to make the states more viable, shouldn't we be a little more creative? Lagos State doesn't have minerals.
I mean,
or maybe it has, I don't know.
Maybe it does, and I think it does actually, but clearly I think the point you make is it's not necessarily depending on just its minerals or the tremendous volumes of IGR that it generates every month. You know, so there's no gainsaying, there's no doubt about it that our states need to be not just more creative, I think they need to be more hardworking, they need to be more enterprising in their thinking. Now, speaking about the governors, the problem, of course, is that we have turned the states to appendages of the federal government who go cap in hand, like we say, every month to Abuja for a FAC allocation. And, you know, look, if I am sure, and this is true for any human being, if I am sure that at the end of this month, 2 million naira will come into my account, if I don't do anything, bros, I will not do anything now. It's inevitable, right? So we have created a system where we have psychologically neutered our state governments. We have castrated them by providing them with guaranteed revenues every month. They won't do anything. So that is one for that's when people talk about restructuring. For me, it's about the fiscal federalism question more than the other issues. There's a lot to talk about within that space as well. But this idea of money being guaranteed every month for state governors is a no. We've got to jettison it. We have to reverse the flow of money. You know, instead of money going from the states, which is actually what happens, to the federal government into a central purse, and then the federal government sharing it, we have to allow those monies to come from the states into their own coffers, where they pay a small token to the federal government to run the common services, so to speak. You know, if we do that, you will see the state will explode.
The question I'm going to ask you on that is, do we have the mechanism to check excesses?
Yes.
Because, I mean, you know, power corrupts.
Absolutely.
And absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Absolutely.
Now, power is just maybe an office authority. Mm-hmm. Now, back power with money.
Absolutely.
Now,
absolutely.
That is awesome power corrupting awesomely.
And what you've done in so doing is you've created emperors. And that's what we have. Because what we have really are almost like monarchies, where these governors are technically not accountable to anybody. The state government is not subordinate to the federal government. It's only a federating unit, but the state governors are the CEOs. So they're not accountable to the federal government. They're accountable to the people of the state. And the people of the state are so pauperized that they simply appear not to be able to muster the will and the energy to drive the accountability framework and structures that exist. We have more than enough. We have more than enough accountability structures to hold the state governors accountable, but the people are not exercising them. The Freedom of Information Act is there. The Fiscal Responsibility Act is there. Do you know, I found, as I was preparing for this conversation, that the Fiscal Responsibility Act actually provides in Clause 51, Section 51 of that Act, the issue of locus standi. That has always been a problem. You know, I'm not a lawyer, but I know that one of the things that judges tend to address first is, what's your locus in this matter? What's your interest? And the Fiscal Responsibility Act says anybody who has the right to take a matter to a federal high court under this act, that the person does not need to demonstrate interest. For me, that is powerful, which means that you and I can simply call a lawyer friend of ours and sue the Kogi State governor, for example, regarding the issue of the school fees that were paid for his family.
Whether I'm from Kogi
or not. Whether I'm from Kogi State or not.
Okay, let's take a few comments. Mike Etu, and you know, you should be the one to react to this, Nabuife. This one is from Mike. who says, viability can be, okay, no, let me go with this one first. Let's understand that what is good for A is good for B. Also, personally, I don't think there is any rationale behind the 5 states in the Southeast, whereas others have emerged, have average of 6 states in all the regions, and Southwest having Southwest has 6. Equity is key. Viability can be achieved if states are run with business mindsets, with leaders, with foresight and vision, creating conducive environment for business, sound legislation, huge investments in education and social systems, reorientation of the citizenry, and credible electoral processes. So I'm sure you've picked a thing or two from that, Sir Nnabuife. So in terms of getting the states to do the right things, he sees value in the argument for the Southeast, and I think every Nigerian would, but then the viability question is definitely something. How do you respond?
Yeah, my brother, you also implied the answer when you were discussing a penultimate question with him in the studio. And the question here is, our democracy throws up a kind of governance that creates democratic emperors and managers, not visionary entrepreneurs. Let me explain. If you go to a state like, I refer to Singapore, where Lee Kuan Yew, in a state that had nothing, brought people together, whether by brutal force or subtle force or by smart politics, anyone, all of them combined, and got the state from underdeveloped nation to a developed nation, from third world to first world, as they called it. That is using management, accountability to bring people in. Now, you go to United Arab Emirates, where the prince there, what he did was to bring, there is a natural resource already in the desert, and the money they make from oil, they use it to manage in a visionary way.
Well, sincerely, Sir Nnabuife, I think the next time we have this conversation with you, we have to, find a way to bring you into the studio, because as much as we're enjoying it, that internet snag is right there. We have to thank you, gentlemen, for coming to join us this morning. Sir Nnabuife, Chuka Nnabuife, is a former managing director and chief executive of the Anambra Newspaper and Printing Corporation, as well as Mr. Segun Sopitan, I almost said Chief Segun Sopitan, who is the chairman of Accountability, Candor and Transparency. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Next conversation coming up is in a way related. It's got to do with something about your tummy. We'll be right back.